Hi, I'm Emily Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the deepest betrayals come wrapped in family loyalty. 10 years ago, I built Meditech Solutions from my garage into a $100 million healthcare technology company. But I never imagined that saving my sister-in-law's life would lead to losing everything I built, or so my brother thought. I still remember the day it all began, 5 years ago. I was in my office, reviewing quarterly reports when my brother Marcus burst in, tears streaming down his face. His wife, Sarah, was dying. Her kidneys were failing, and she needed a transplant urgently. Without hesitation, I got tested. We were a match. You don't have to do this, Mom said, her voice trembling. The surgery, the recovery. What about your company? But I had already made up my mind. Sarah was family, and family comes first. That's what I believed back then. The irony of that belief still makes me laugh bitterly today. The surgery was successful. I gave Sarah my kidney, and she got a second chance at life. The recovery was harder than I expected. For 3 months, I worked from my hospital bed, then from home, managing Meditech through video calls and late-night emails. Marcus visited often, bringing flowers and gratitude. "You saved our family, he would say, his eyes filled with what I thought was genuine appreciation. I'll never forget this. He didn't forget, but not in the way I expected. As I recovered, Marcus started showing more interest in Meditech. He'd stop by my office, asking questions about operations, finances, board members. I thought he was just being supportive, trying to help while I regained my strength. Sarah even started working in our HR department, my idea, a way to keep her close and give her purpose during her recovery. The company continued to grow. Our healthcare management software was being adopted by major hospitals across the country. We were innovating, expanding, thriving. But with success came complications I never saw coming. Marcus began attending board meetings as my advisor. He had an MBA from Harvard and a background in corporate finance. "Let me help you, he'd say. "You need to rest more after the surgery." Doctor's orders. Gradually, subtly, things began to change. Meetings would be scheduled when I was at medical checkups. Important decisions would be made in casual conversations over drinks. Drinks I couldn't have due to my post-donation dietary restrictions. Marcus became the face of Meditech at industry events, while I was focusing on my health. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The sympathetic looks from my executive assistant. The way Sarah would avoid eye contact in the hallways. Then came the company's 10th anniversary celebration. I had planned a small gathering, but Marcus turned it into a major event at the city's most expensive hotel. "We need to show our strength to the investors," he insisted. I spent weeks preparing my founder's speech, excited to share our vision for the future. The ballroom was packed with employees, investors, and industry leaders. I sat at the main table, flanked by our board members, watching Marcus approach the podium for what I thought would be a brief introduction. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the silent room. "My sister started this company with a dream. Today, Meditech stands as a testament to innovation in healthcare technology." I smiled, waiting for him to continue. But then his tone changed. "However, times change, and so must leadership. Since my sister's kidney donation, her health has become increasingly fragile. Her frequent medical appointments and physical limitations have begun to impact the company's operations." My heart stopped. The room began to spin. This couldn't be happening. "The board and I have discussed this at length," Marcus continued, not even looking in my direction. "It's time for Meditech to enter a new era of leadership, one that isn't compromised by health issues and outdated management styles." I looked at the board members, people I had personally chosen, mentored, trusted. They were all nodding, some even smiling encouragingly at Marcus. "Emily," he turned to me now, his voice dripping with fake concern, "you're too weak to lead now. It's time to step down. Let those of us with the strength and vision take Meditech into the future." The room erupted in murmurs. I sat there, frozen, as Marcus continued his character assassination disguised as concerned brotherhood. Sarah sat beside him, head bowed, wearing the designer watch I had given her as a recovery gift. After all, Marcus's voice cut through my thoughts. What kind of sister would risk the livelihoods of hundreds of employees because of her pride? "Haven't I always looked out for you, Em?" Let me take care of everything, just like you took care of Sarah. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes on me. They expected tears, perhaps a scene. Instead, I walked to the podium, placed my prepared speech on it, and said quietly, "Congratulations, Marcus. I hope you know what you're doing." Then I walked out, head held high, leaving behind the whispers and stares. In my car, I finally let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My hand brushed against my surgery scar, a permanent reminder of what I had given and what I had lost. But Marcus had forgotten something crucial, something that would turn his moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of his life. As I drove home, a small smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be very interesting indeed. After all, I hadn't spent 10 years building a healthcare technology empire without learning a thing or two about protecting what's mine. Marcus was about to learn that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones you should fear the most. I pulled into my driveway, already formulating my plan. My phone was buzzing with concerned messages from employees, investors, and board members. I ignored them all and went straight to my home office. Opening my laptop, I began typing. By dawn, everything would be ready. Marcus thought he had won. But he had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the quietest revenge is the most satisfying. The next morning would bring changes that none of them saw coming. Changes that would make them realize exactly how weak I really was. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m., well before anyone else would arrive. As I walked through the quiet halls of Meditech's headquarters, I couldn't help but smile at the security cameras tracking my movement. After all, I had personally overseen the installation of every single one. At precisely 9 a.m., Marcus strode through the front doors, Sarah trailing behind him. Both wore expressions of triumph that were about to be wiped clean off their faces. "Emily?" Marcus's voice held a mix of surprise and annoyance. "What are you doing here? I thought after last night you'd have the dignity to stay home and rest." "Oh, I'm feeling quite strong today," I replied, motioning them into the main conference room. "In fact, I've never felt better. We should probably discuss the company's future." "There's nothing to discuss," Marcus snapped, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling security." "I wouldn't do that if I were you," I interrupted, pulling out my tablet. "You see, while you were busy planning your little coup, I was busy too. Tell me, Marcus, did you actually read the company's founding documents, or were you too focused on practicing your speech?" The first hints of uncertainty crept into his expression. "What are you talking about?" I projected a document onto the conference room's main screen. "Let's start with ownership structure. When I founded Meditech, I created a dual-class share system. The publicly traded shares that you and the board have been so focused on, they're Class B shares. Voting rights, yes, but limited control." Sarah's perfectly manicured hands gripped the back of a chair as I continued. "The Class A shares, which hold supermajority control, they're held by a private trust, my private trust, one that specifically states that medical conditions cannot be used as grounds for leadership removal." Marcus's face paled. "That's impossible." The board can vote however they like." I cut him off. "It doesn't change the fact that I control 70% of the company's voting power. But that's just the beginning." I pulled up another document. "Remember that healthcare management software that generates 80% of our revenue? The one you've been taking credit for in those lovely interviews? It's not actually owned by Meditech. It's licensed through my personal holding company, MTech Innovations." "You can't do this," Marcus whispered, his confidence crumbling. "I already have," I replied, pulling up my email. "Last night, I sent notices to all our major clients. You see, their contracts include a key person clause. Me. If I'm forcibly removed from leadership, they have the right to terminate their contracts without penalty." I showed them my inbox, filled with responses. "Would you like to know how many have already indicated they'll exercise that right? Or should we discuss the fact that our top developers and research team are actually employed through MTech, not Meditech?" Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Emily, please, think about what you're doing. Think about the family." "Family?" I stood up, lifting my blouse slightly to show my surgery scar. "Like how you thought about family when you sat there silently last night. When you watched your husband try to steal the company I built while using my kidney donation as a weapon." The room fell silent. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Marcus frantically scrolled through his phone, no doubt seeing the company's stock price beginning to plummet as news spread. You have two options, I continued calmly. Option 1. I walk away with my intellectual property, my key employees, and my major clients. Meditech becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to the board and shareholders why the company's value dropped to zero overnight. And option 2, Marcus asked weakly. You and Sarah resign immediately. You surrender your shares at current market value, which I should mention is dropping by the minute. You sign ironclad non-compete agreements and you move far, far away from here. In return, I don't pursue legal action for corporate espionage and attempted hostile takeover. You wouldn't dare, Marcus sputtered. We're family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Funny how family only matters when you need something from me. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, I start making phone calls to the SEC about some interesting financial movements I've noticed in company accounts since you started attending board meetings. The next hour was a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and barely contained chaos. By noon, I sat alone in my office, looking out over the city. My phone buzzed continuously with messages from board members suddenly remembering their loyalty, industry leaders expressing support, and employees pledging their commitment. Mom called that evening, crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked. They gave me no choice, I replied softly. They tried to use my sacrifice against me. They forgot that giving away a kidney didn't mean giving away my spine. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Marcus and Sarah moved to California, their dreams of corporate takeover shattered. The board members who had supported them resigned quietly, replaced by people who understood the true meaning of loyalty. Meditech not only survived but thrived. Within a year, our market value had doubled. Our healthcare management software expanded internationally, helping millions of patients. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company they thought was weakened by my medical condition was revolutionizing healthcare technology. Sometimes late at night, I trace the scar on my side and think about family, loyalty, and betrayal. I don't regret donating my kidney. Sarah's life was worth saving regardless of what came after. But I learned that true strength isn't measured by physical health or corporate titles. It's measured by the quiet power of being underestimated and proving everyone wrong. These days, when I attend industry events, I often hear whispers. That's Emily Chen, the one woe. They never finish the sentence, but they don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to give a keynote speech at a healthcare technology conference. The topic? Resilience and leadership. Finding strength in adversity. I accepted with a smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. Marcus sent an email recently, the first contact in 2 years. A rambling apology talking about regret and family bonds. I haven't replied. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. Mom still hopes for reconciliation. Family is family, she says. But I've learned that true family isn't defined by blood or shared history. It's defined by respect, loyalty, and understanding that strength comes in many forms. As I write this from my office, watching the sunset over the city skyline, I think about the journey that brought me here. The surgery scar has faded, but the lessons remain. Never underestimate the quiet ones, never mistake kindness for weakness, and never ever try to steal from someone who gave you their kidney. Meditech continues to grow, but more importantly, I found peace with my decisions. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others, it's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes reflected in your success. I keep a small photo on my desk, from the day I left the hospital after the kidney donation. Marcus and Sarah are there, smiling, promising eternal gratitude. I keep it not as a reminder of betrayal, but as a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others try to use against us. In the end, they thought my sacrifice made me weak. Instead, it showed me just how strong I really was.